ECSI fans, you want to revolutionize your sports investing habits? Allow me to tell you about WagerWire. WagerWire is an app that helps you become a superior bettor by allowing you to sync all your sports books and track all your bets in one place. See your current action, your betting history, and stats. You could also sign up for sports books and collect bonus offers. Follow them at WagerWire on X, as it's the best account on the platform. Head to App Store or Play Store now and search WagerWire and download the app.
Check this out. We got a great show coming your way.
From the ECSI Sports Studios, the #1 sports information program in America, the Breakfast Bankroll, with your host, the sports broker, Jeff Dawson.
Morning, sports fans from all around the globe. I am the co-host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors, and it's that time of the week for Re-Entry Monday, the Breakfast Bankroll. Good friend and colleague, Mr. Scotty Webb, live from Tampa, as we discuss what we saw in college football in the NFL yesterday, a breakdown of tonight's game, and a little peek on what we have on deck for week 12 in college football already. Some surprises, some upsets, as always, some great endings. Toe taps in Penn State, Indiana. What a catch, what a toe tap. But we'll get to that, of course. First and foremost, a shout out to our proud sponsors and partnerships. It's WagerWire. Head on over to Google Play, download the app. It is free. Travis, Zach, Guy, myself, Amber, Holly, Carol, Bucks, Matthew, Allen. The list is endless. Come on board. Enjoy us for the rest of 2025. 2026 is going to be epic, I promise you. And, of course, AtlantaSteaksAndSeafood.com. Terry Smith does wonders over there. Steaks, seafoods, chops, appetizers, wines. Terry's got it all. 4 subscription plans. Just set it and forget it. Every 30 days, have a box of protein delivered right to your front door. The only thing you'll need is a spare propane tank. So without further ado, let's bring him in. Mr. Scotty Webb. What's up, chap?
What's going on, brother? You doing all right?
Hanging in there. How about yourself?
I am preparing for our cold snap that we're getting in the next 2 days. Holy crap.
Well, it's funny. I survived the BC game Saturday. It was wet. It was rainy. But by kickoff, it was high 50s. But the last home game of the year, Saturday, Georgia Tech, 3:30 start. The problem is it's going to be about 30 degrees as we set up our last home game there. Highs of 42, so dress warm, and welcome to New England, Scotty.
Hey, man, look, it's supposed to be 37 degrees here in the morning. Here, right here, where I live, 37 degrees. I think people are going to I don't know what they're going to do. I'm glad there's no participation, otherwise it'd be snowing down here, for God's sakes. In Florida, snowing. We only get 2 days, and then we're supposed to be back to 80 by Friday. So I'll be happy Friday. But my wife thinks it's the greatest thing in the world because now she can wear boots, and I'm like, I don't give a shit about the boots. God bless it. It's cold as shit. We moved out of that weather for this reason. Get that, all that stuff.
Headliner: Patriots, BUC, Mayfield, and Tampa. Come out, you score on the first possession. You took a 7-0 lead. The amazing thing about Drake May, and listen, we've been watching football forever. I had to deal with the spoiled brats of the Patriots nation. 6 Super Bowls with Brady. And listen, I'm taking nothing away from Brady. Brady was awesome. And the 6 championships were fun. But this Drake May here, Scott, you got to watch it live and witness it. And I'm going to say this, and please tell me differ. Have you seen a kid at this age in his second year, hasn't even played 16 full game, throw a better deep ball? Can you remember someone that can just throw a better deep? I mean, just the dropping in buckets, the effortless, and bam, it's right there.
Well, the best quarterback I think that I ever saw throw a football, I don't care what age he was Dan Marino. I mean, I don't mean that in any disrespectful way.
Mm-hmm.
The guy can throw and effortlessly throw, deep balls, and and if he had to rip it somewhere, he could rip it, right? So I think that's, but I will say this, looking at data and look at the numbers, and I wasn't on that game yesterday. Thankfully, I know there was a lot of people that thought it was a Tampa Bay game yesterday. A lot of people in our lanes, I think, had Tampa Bay from what I saw, and from contest picks and different things that kind of led me to believe a lot of people were on Tampa Bay. Anyway, I ran the game, and it didn't come out to be a bettable situation compared to other spots, so I didn't bet it. But in looking at the data, and then so I didn't watch a lot of the game. I was watching other games that I was on. So I found it to be interesting that pass percentage OE. So what that means is completion percentage over expectation. So how good was your quarterback at completing passes? And May was 87th percentile. So he was, 13th out of 100 best. I mean, that's a great grade. And that was kind of the difference in the game, because Baker Mayfield was 1.9. Late down conversions, they were 47%, and Tampa Bay couldn't get first downs. So the only problem I think New England had in that game, and you probably watched most of it, it looked like they had problems in the red zone. They're negative EPA in the red zone. But other than that, they did good. They didn't do great. He doesn't show that he scrambled real well, but you don't have to if you're way ahead and doing different things. And when down here, obviously we're going to get press conferences and news articles and all the stuff, and that Baker Mayfield made some comments, and the head coach made some comments, basically just saying, hey, look, there were 4 spots in that game where they needed to execute, and ideally they didn't execute. And when you don't execute like that in an NFL game, you're going to lose. So especially if you're playing a quality opponent. So I think 2 things come into play and come into mind, right? So one of the things that we've been talking about is how good it really is New England, because they haven't played anybody. Well, they played somebody yesterday. Not that they're the greatest team in the NFL. Don't get me wrong. That's not what I'm saying. But they're not the Jets. You know what I'm saying? They're not the Browns. They're not the peons of the league. So, and they played them on the road. Of course, it was a nice day. It was 80 degrees, and they didn't have to deal with like what was going on in Miami yesterday. It was 86 degrees, but it was raining. So they didn't have to deal with bad weather. That was great for them. And you know what? They went down there and they did it, right? And all you heard about all week was how Todd Bowles is a guy that is a mastermind against young quarterbacks. And it didn't seem to me like that was probably the case yesterday. And I think Mike Vrabel's got this team, and I'm not saying it's all him, but I think Mike Vrabel's got the team believing, A, and then B, I think the quarterback is, think about that, or think about this, like at the end of last year, or maybe at the beginning of last year, middle of last year, how many of the New England Patriots fans would have said, I would have rather had Bo Nix than the quarterback they got? I mean, probably a lot of them because, he made the playoffs and all that stuff. Well, I can guarantee you this. Ain't none of them saying that today. And the reality is Bo Nix he's if he wasn't the pet project of that head coach, he might not be even starting anymore. He's been that bad.
Well, it's kind of funny, a lot to go over what you just said. The two rooks, big plays. Trevion Henderson, Ramondre was out. Big plays there. He had a big day, the coming out party for Trevion Henderson. And then Kyle Williams, the third-round wide receiver from Iowa State. A couple big plays there as well. The Patriots swept your division. They win in Tampa. They won in New Orleans, and then they beat Carolina, and then they beat Atlanta at home, so they went 4-0 in your division. They've had two big tests on the road. They passed those. They won at Buffalo. Now they win in Tampa. They play Thursday, 10.5-point favorites, so it reminds me of the Denver Vegas game. Probably chewing their foods. If you look past them, you could get bitten the you-know-what. Bo Nix now the co-favorite with Stafford to win the MVP. A lot of good things going in this Patriot team. Now they have a 1.5 lead on Buffalo. You talked about that quarterback class, and I bet you if you asked any of the coaches and GMs right now, it's not even up for debate at this point who the number one quarterback was coming out of that class. And the Patriots were gifted it because their win Christmas Eve in Denver had them slide. They would have been on the Jaden Daniels string. But by them beating Denver, Washington moved in front of them and took Jaden Daniels there. But I have to go to this immediately. The Patriots and Tom Brady never, ever played well in South Beach. It didn't matter if it was 80 degrees or if it was 30 degrees. Just something about Tom, they never played well there. Well, I watched Buffalo 9.5-point favorites. They were steamrolled from Jump Street. And now your Bucks come in. Buffalo opened 6-point favorites, now down to 5.5. The loser of this game would have lost 2 in a row after Sunday. And one of them's going to be looking over their back shoulder, Scotty, after next Sunday.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a big game. Anytime, that you got those kind of teams playing each other's big game. I think it's a way bigger game for Buffalo than it is for Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is in a division where, all the other teams keep losing, or a team like New Orleans wins a game. Well, that's not going to mean anything to the division run there. So Buffalo needs to win. And Buffalo hasn't looked good. I thought that, I saw a little bit of that, and if that quarterback is a little bit off for Buffalo, Josh Allen, they don't do well. And two, if he's not Superman, they don't do well. And their defense is overrated as far as I'm concerned. So, I think Buffalo's a team that absolutely has to win that game, especially when it becomes a home game. I don't know what the weather's going to be like. I know tonight in Green Bay, it's like 28 degrees. So if it's that cold for Tampa Bay, they're not going to win. Tampa Bay doesn't do well in the cold weather. So, Tampa Bay still needs some of their weapons to come back and some different things. They're still fighting a little bit, one arm behind their back to a degree. That's not an excuse because, other teams find ways to win, and they have been winning to a certain degree. So I think you're right that it's a big game, but to be honest, I think it's a way bigger game for Buffalo than it is for Tampa Bay. I almost think Tampa Bay can cruise control and win their division and make the playoffs. There's no way Buffalo can do that. So, Buffalo's going to be shooting for a wild card at this point. And New England's going to win this. So So if Buffalo is going to try to get in, they're going to have to be better than the other teams in the AFC. And my God, what have we been talking about? Kansas City needs to make wins, and Baltimore needs to make wins. So that puts Buffalo on a much bigger pressure spot than you might think.
No, and Kansas City coming off a bye travels to Denver. And again, a hiccup by Kansas City and a hiccup by the Bills on Sunday. And you're going to see these teams at the bottom be looking like this. And don't forget, the Ravens, a nice win in Minnesota as they're trying to stay afloat as the Steelers lose on Sunday night to the Chargers. So there, you could be looking at the bottom there of a Ravens, Kansas City, and Buffalo, which no one had on their big bingo card. Outside looking in, Scotty, after the dust settles next Sunday.
Yeah, but I also think that watching that game last night, I was the Pittsburgh and Chargers game. I was on the under and was so happy at halftime. I was like, there's no way this is going over. But watching Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh played the week before and played a good game and beat a team that they probably shouldn't really beat and dominated that game. I can't remember who it is off the top of my head, but it was somebody.
Colts.
There you go. They beat the Colts up. So this week they come in and they, as far as I'm concerned, their defense is pretty good. But Aaron Rodgers looked ridiculous. At one point in the game, I don't know what he finally ended up with. He was 9 completions in 20 attempts for, I don't even know if he had 100 yards. He was bad. It looked like he made a lot of mistakes. And I'm not afraid of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Looking at the standings, you've got Pittsburgh there, and we just keep talking about Baltimore. Well, Baltimore is now 4-5, and Pittsburgh's 5-4. Baltimore's going to pass this Pittsburgh team, and then Pittsburgh's going to have to fight with the teams like Buffalo and Kansas City to make the playoffs. And there's no way that those teams are worse than the Steelers. So I think the Steelers have a rude awakening coming, especially for their fans and the people that really support them, because they're going to have to get their crap together because you're not going to be able to win football games the way they played yesterday. I thought the Chargers embarrassed them. And that's another team that is going to be fighting for these playoffs too, is the Chargers. I mean, the Chargers are, what are their record? The Chargers they're 7-3 for God's sakes. That they're going to be they're in a good spot. So I think that puts a lot of pressure on those teams that are trying to get in. I also thought, watching that game a little bit, I was doing a lot of work yesterday in the morning for these games that I bet on, so I didn't watch a lot total it. But I thought that Indianapolis played a weird game, meaning that I thought their quarterback was not so good yesterday, but they really relied on their running back. The running back had, I don't know, almost 200 yards rushing, and I know he caught a lot of passes and scored a bunch of touchdowns. Atlanta's supposed to be halfway decent, and Atlanta gave them a fight. That game went into overtime, and I thought that was good resolve for Indianapolis, but it also shows that they're not, they might have the best record them in Denver have the best record in the conference, but they're not the best teams. So I think that shows a little bit of those cracks in those teams. You can't tell me Denver's the best team, even though they got a good defense, when they can't beat the Raiders by margin. I mean, holy crap. The Raiders were the most ridiculous team in football. So I think, when you start to think about it, whether you get the number 1 seed or not, I don't think it's going to be super important this year, because the best teams aren't going to be there for the number 1 seed. And then, especially in the AFC. Now, the NFC is a little different, but in the AFC, you're not going to have the number 1 seed get be the best team. So I think you're going to see that those other teams are going to win several games and go, and which is going to be good for us betting on these teams and looking at playoff games and stuff like that, because we're going to get to watch the good teams play a lot.
NFC, again, I don't want to say the creams rising to the top. There's some separation, the shoulda, coulda, wouldas, the have-nots. But Super Bowl's in San Francisco this year. There's a team out there and a quarterback cooking with Crisco. That's Matt Stafford. 25 touchdowns this year, 2 interceptions. Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams, who left at the end with a little tweak in his back. The Seattle Seahawks, the NFC West especially, those two teams will meet, by the way, on Sunday. Rams open up 2.5-point favorites. Tonight we'll get more clarity as well as the Packers, who opened up 3-point favorites, now 1-point favorites against the Eagles. And then on Sunday, this coming Sunday, Eagles host the Lions. Only 1.5-point favorites there. Thoughts on what you saw from the Rams, Seattle, and just how good those two teams are in the NFC?
Well, I think I made the comment last week at some point in the shows that you need to have something with Seattle in your portfolio. I mean, Seattle, you just got to have them in there. The reason is twofold. One, they got a pretty good head coach out there, and they got a pretty good program. Their defense has been playing lights out. The quarterback and the offense has been pretty good, and now that they've got Njigba doing whatever they got Njigba doing, he's catching 75 million balls every game and, getting 17,000 yards every game. That's a good team. And, we're going to find out just how good they are. Arizona wasn't much competition. I get it. They got a fumble return for a touchdown and then another touchdown. They had 14-0. Jeff, they were hit, I think, 35-0 in that game, and it was the second quarter or something. So they were on cruise control the rest of the game, which was great because I was on Seattle yesterday. I was like, holy crap, this is great. I was 3-0 yesterday in the NFL. I went 4-3 in college. So, college wasn't the greatest, but, 7-3, I'll take it. I was on that game, and I was on the under in the Pittsburgh game, and I was on the Ravens yesterday. So I was kind of happy with how everything turned out. I was a little worried about the Ravens. They kept kicking field goal after field goal after field goal at the beginning. But as things kind of are going here, I think you can start really looking at a couple things. Find out who the better quarterbacks are and start betting on the better quarterbacks. The better quarterbacks are going to get you to where you need to go. I think that's good. I think you're going to be. I made a note here that like backup quarterbacks are hit or miss. That like the Houston quarterback yesterday, the backup quarterback played. I don't know what happened to Jacksonville. I mean, they scored 26 points in the fourth quarter, 26-0, and they had to have all those points to win the game. But their backup quarterback led them there, so that was one thing. But like the New York Giants, right? The backup quarterback was good. Well, I shouldn't say that. Jackson Dart's the starting quarterback, but when he got hurt, the backup quarterback came in, and then they didn't win the game, and it was stupid. Arizona's backup quarterback was terrible. The Washington's backup quarterback, they can't win with him. So you're kind of hit or miss with those guys. The backup quarterback for San Francisco has been doing great. So it's hit or miss. So be careful on the backup quarterback situations. But, I think the NFC, I think there's going to be a lot of Eagles backers tonight. I think based off of what you saw from Green Bay the last time, right, was Carolina went in there and beat them at home. I don't think you're going to see that Packers team. I think you're going to see a better Packers team tonight. I didn't bet this game because, in my opinion, it's a coin flip game. I also didn't bet the total because a lot of people go, well, it's cold, so they can't score points. Well, that's not true. In the cold weather, they can score points. It's a matter of the wind in the cold and stuff like that. Those guys don't care about playing in cold weather. So just be careful on what you listen to and what you think about in terms of that game. I think it's a coin flip game, and I would be shocked. I mean, I would be totally shocked if Green Bay didn't show up for this game. I think Green Bay shows up, and I think Philadelphia needs to show up, or they'll get run out of the building tonight, to be honest. So Philadelphia needs to be there, because there's games they kind of seem like they walk through and go through the motions, and if this is one of those games, they're going to get blasted. So my opinion of this game basically is, I would not be on Philadelphia in any way, shape, or form. If I was going to bet it, I would be betting Green Bay, but I can't get to the window. I don't think there's value on Green Bay. I know they're -1 now, and they were -3, so that's a little bit of value in the market. But I'm looking at, Seattle, like yesterday, right? They won by, they covered 6.5, and, they could have named their score almost. I'm looking for stuff like that to bet on. And this isn't one of those spots. This is, where you're going to have a good game to watch. It's going to have, good things to deal with that way. But I just think betting opportunities, unless you find prop bets or other things that you like, I'm not a big prop bet guy. I'm not out here trying to figure out how many yards somebody's going to get. So when it comes to those kinds of things, I'm kind of out on tonight's game, other than I think it's going to be fun to watch for sure.
Yeah, and 2 weeks ago we were on the Packers 3-point favorites at Pittsburgh, down 16-7 at half. It was on a Sunday night game. The world was on the Steelers, and then I think 28-3 they outscored them in the second half there. Then come home at 13.5-point favorites to Carolina that everyone's forgetting, and lost outright. And the number opened at 3 for a reason. They needed Eagle money. They got Eagle money up the wazoo. And so now we're sitting at a -1, 1.5. The world on the Eagles versus the Packers there. Transition to college. Some great games, some great finishes. Nothing better than the Hoosiers keeping their undefeated streak alive. Just go back and Google Gus Johnson on the third down call. Quarterback looking about to get sacked, throws it up. Wide receiver catches the ball. Defender trying to push him out of the end zone. And as his feet are going out of bounds, he somehow, someway cut his right foot to tap down in the end zone. Touchdown, Hoosiers. What a game, Scotty.
Yeah, I was disappointed in the outcome, even though it was a great game. I bet Indiana, right? And Indiana was at one point in that game within a field goal of covering. I mean, they were pretty good. And then I think that so what these games kind of start to show, because Penn State's not as bad as that their record is. They're a lot better than what their record is. They played really good in that game, and I also think that shows that how good they played against Oregon too at home. They played those guys. I mean, Oregon's game went into overtime, and they could have won that game in overtime. They just didn't. So I think when you start to think about kind of where the shakeout in college football is, that was a great game to watch, and kind of where things were going to go. And you ask me, I'm going to ask you. I watched Indiana play in that game. I watched their quarterback. I watched their offense. I watched their defense. I don't think they match up to Ohio State. I just don't. And when I saw what I saw, the quarterback was good, but he wasn't great. The wide receivers are good, but they're not great. The defense was pretty decent. The kids for Penn State played really hard. They put pressure on the quarterback. I thought they were able to move the ball. I didn't think that was going to happen. They got a couple of big plays I didn't think were going to happen. So I don't think they're going to do that against Ohio State. Well, I mean, they already played Ohio State, but Indiana's going to play Ohio State. And that line's already out, by the way. It's 3.5 or 3 for Ohio State. I think Ohio State's more than that above in Indiana on a neutral site. If it was in Ohio State, I mean, shit. I think they're that much better. Now, that said, that Oregon game with Iowa, I don't know if you watched that game, but that was another one that was where I was on Oregon, and Oregon was covering at one point, and I thought, okay, we're gonna take it now. Well, I look at that and I start watching them and I start going, you know what the difference is between these teams and the other teams is their quarterback. The Oregon quarterback wasn't that good yesterday in that game. The Iowa quarterback's definitely not that good. But what ended up happening is that they just kept finding a way. And Oregon had to really go tooth and nail to win that game. I mean, you know, Iowa came in and basically put them right up to the wall. So I thought that the college football was really interesting in those games. I thought what was the other game that I thought even though Texas A&M covered, Texas A&M played Missouri. I didn't like how they played. I thought Texas A&M, for one of the better teams in college football, knew that Missouri's quarterback was a replacement, right? And the kid wasn't that great. The data shows he wasn't very good. He missed a lot of passes, incompletes, and all that stuff. So you knew Missouri was going to run the ball. Well, Texas A&M's got a good defense, but couldn't stop them. Missouri ran the ball for over 200 yards, and you can't tell me that you're an elite team. You're an elite team with the idea being that you can't stop a team that only has one option to move the football, and you can't stop them. So that led me to downgrade my thoughts on Texas A&M. I thought Texas A&M was bad because of that, even though they won and covered the game. But that kind of tells you that the quarterback made a lot of difference for Missouri being out. The second thing I thought was Texas Tech's really good. I thought Texas Tech beating BYU the way they did was a big thing, and now yards per play margin, I think they're number 2 in the country, which gives them, yards per point margin. They're number 2, which gives them a super big, advantage. And I think that merits maybe a little bit of under ranking of where they are, right? Because, what is it, Ohio State and then Indiana and then is it Texas Tech 3rd or 4th? I don't remember.
A&M, I think, is 3rd.
Yeah, so Texas Tech is I think Texas Tech was behind BYU, for God's sakes. Maybe they were 8th and BYU was 7th or something like that. So I think Texas Tech's for real. I don't know that necessarily means that they're going to, be the right side to bet on every week, but they're for real. And I think that they answered a lot of questions there with that game. And I thought Georgia did the same. Like Georgia was, only 6.5, 7.5 point favorites, got bet up to 9.5, and they won that game. Blew out Mississippi State. So we'll see what it looks like this week because it's Georgia, Texas this week. So we'll see what that game looks like. And Arch Manning's starting to play a little better. His QBR rating has gone from, being down around 70 to now he's in the top 50. So he's been moving up in the ranks that way. So we'll see what that looks like as that kind of comes along. But, we'll see where, the SEC's playing, these teams are starting to play each other, and they've got good games going on. And the Big Ten, you've got Ohio State and Oregon and Indiana, and now they don't play anybody. They're Ohio State really plays nobody until they play Michigan. They're 30-some point favorites this week. I think Oregon's 30-point favorites this week. Indiana, I don't remember. I don't even think they play this week. So it's just interesting how some of the stuff is breaking out that way. So I guess those are some of my thoughts. I thought it was, I was trying to follow the Ole Miss and Citadel game just because Ole Miss was 52-point favorites. And I wanted to see if Lane Kiffin knew what the number was and if he was going to try to get there. He didn't. I think that was like 49-0, and then they let him. Well, I shouldn't say let him. Nobody lets anything happen, but Citadel did score at the end to cover the 50-some points. I thought that was kind of weird.
Yeah, looking at the board, we'll have some action tomorrow. Ohio
There's some big games in the MAC. There's some big games coming up.
Ohio at Western Michigan right now. Ohio 2.5-point favorites there. Kent State at Akron. Akron right now 6-point favorites there on Wednesday. Northern Illinois at UMass. Toledo at Miami of Ohio. Toledo 3.5 now. Buffalo at Central Michigan. Central Michigan only 2. The Pats and Jets on Thursday. The Pats now up to 12.5 at the Circa. Thursday night in Troy at ODU. ODU is 10.5. Friday, Clemson at Louisville. Louisville 3.5. Clemson beats Florida State this week. Last weekend, excuse me. And Minnesota at Oregon. Oregon now 24. Highlight games on Saturday, as you said, Texas at Georgia. Right now, Georgia 6.5-point favorites with a 47.5. A sneaky good game. Arizona at Cincinnati. Cincinnati -6 with a 56.5. Virginia at Duke. Duke 6.5-point favorites. That's an eye opener there. What else do we got here? NC State at Miami. Miami 15 with a 55. Ohio State hosting UCLA 31.5. There. Oklahoma at Alabama. Alabama 6.5 with a 46.5. Utah at Baylor. Utah 9 with a 61.5. Florida travels to Ole Miss. Ole Miss 15.5 with a 53.5. Arkansas LSU. LSU 6.5. Let me see if there's anything else. TCU, BYU. I think TCU coming off a loss. That'll be an interesting one. Both teams coming off loss. BYU only 5.5 with a 52.5. Iowa 6.5-point underdogs at USC. And the nightcap, the 10:30 special, Boise State 3-point underdogs to San Diego State, Scotty.
Well, Boise State's quarterback is hurt, so he's out for the year. So, and San Diego State, I don't know what happened to them. They went to Hawaii this last game, and I think took a vacation. That team's been great to bet on. That team's been a wagon when it comes to the gambling points, but they didn't cover that game. They got blown out. It was like 38-7. I don't know, something happened to them. So they got out there and just decided that, okay, I'm in Hawaii, we're going to have fun. But San Diego State's also one of those schools where they're familiar with Hawaii, and those kids, at one point in my life when I was younger, way younger, I lived in San Diego, so I'm pretty comfortable with the understanding and knowledge that those kids, a lot of them are from Hawaii around that neighborhood. So, it was just a weird setup. A couple other games I thought, Jeff, that are worth talking about. Where was it? East Carolina plays Memphis. And what's interesting is East Carolina is the favorite against Memphis. I thought that was kind of interesting in that particular spot there. These games for example, the MAC, right? We talk about the MAC and MACtion and all that. Ohio is 4-1, Miami's 4-1, Buffalo's 4-1, and Western Michigan's 4-1. And you've got Ohio and Western Michigan playing each other. So that's kind of like an elimination game. So that's a big game in that spot. And Toledo and Miami, Ohio are playing each other. And that's a big spot for Toledo, because if Toledo wins, that's going to put them kind of right back in the picture. And we saw what they did last week. What was that? A huge win that they beat the crack out of somebody. And Buffalo's playing Central Michigan. And we just said Buffalo's 4-1. Well, Buffalo's not even the favorite in this game. So the MAC is all weird, and these games all matter. And looking at it, when I kind of looked at it a little bit earlier, the Buffalo's offense is one of the worst offenses in all football, but they got one of the best defenses. So we'll see. I haven't run any games through anything yet, but there's interesting spots, interesting things to look at. Sometimes when I just do the preface work, the yards per point margin, jumps out at me and says, "Hey, you've got certain spots here that are really good." Like yards per point margin for Troy is plus 2.8. For Old Dominion is minus 0.1. So and then you've got Old Dominion minus 11. So I'll look at that and kind of see what's going on there. But strength of schedule tells me that Old Dominion's played a tougher way to go, and they got a much better quarterback. So it might balance things out more. And to be honest, I've not that I've totally disbanded some of these smaller conference schools, but anything happens in those games. I mean, those kids are they're better than high school talent for sure, but they're not the kids that are playing at Alabama and Auburn and whatever, right? So that you can rely a little bit more heavily on. So, and another, I think Friday, Clemson, Louisville's a good game. And to be honest, I'm not sure what to think of Louisville. To be, I don't know. When you look at yards per point margin, it does favor Louisville, but by a little bit. So it's interesting to see. I'll run it in the AI programs and stuff when I get my data points and all that, and we'll see how it works. But I'm going to guess that that's being at home for Louisville will matter some. But their quarterback hasn't been the greatest there, so we'll just, I guess, see how that goes. And I think UConn's been kind of underrated in a lot of these spots. They play Air Force and they're 8-point favorites. They ought to beat Air Force by more than that, but we'll see. Anyway, I think there's a lot of spots out there this week that merit looking into. And I don't know what to think of Iowa USC. When I watched USC play, I thought Northwestern, I thought that they would handle their offense a little better. And I think obviously Iowa's going to have a better offense than Northwestern's. But we'll see how that turns out because USC's defense is their only snafu. They got one of the best offenses in football. Baylor's game. What was Baylor's game? That one was another one that stood out to me. Where is it? Baylor and Utah. That game. So Utah is yards per point margin like top 5 in the country, and Baylor they're +8. Baylor is minus 1.2. That margin, that spread based off of that alone should be double digits. So I'm really looking at maybe see if I can. And it looks like, what was it? That game opened at 8.5. It's out 9.5, something like that. 9.5. I think that's going to be one that they win by 2 touchdowns. Utah.
Yeah, that's a total of 60.5 with an 8.5 now, 9 at the Circle with a 61.5. There are 9.5s everywhere else there. Be a good board. Some highlight games, of course. In colleges tomorrow, they'll have their second week of the playoffs, who's in, who's out, which is meaningless. So we got about, like I said, Saturday will be my last home game for BC. Then I think they end at Syracuse, a team that won opening game against Fordham. They put up a 60-burger, haven't won since. Played a good game 2 weeks ago against Notre Dame till the fourth quarter, and just was never in this week's game. Sad, tough year. Jim, I always want to say Jim O'Brien, Bill O'Brien, trying to rebuild that program there. SEC, as you said, Texas and Arch starting to cook with Crisco here. Be real interesting how they do between the hedges there. This Georgia team, they're good, but it's not that Georgia defense that we're so accustomed to. Alabama, again, got the job done, but wasn't great. The SEC shaking out. Is there 4? Is there 5 teams coming out of there? The Big Ten. I did watch that Oregon-Iowa game. Oregon very lucky to walk out of there with a win. Ohio State, Indiana are definitely, solidified their ways in there. Oregon with a loss there would have been maybe in trouble. So everything will start to shake itself out there. Just like the NFL, as we talked about earlier here today. You're seeing the cream rise to the top in the NFC and the AFC. The pre-flop favorites, the Bills, the Ravens, the Chiefs got a lot of work to do there as the Colts, the Patriots sit on top, and Denver sit on top of the AFC, Scotty.
Yeah, I think that's right, and I think that we talked about it a little bit. I think that some of these teams it matters way more to than others. Some of their games coming up, because a team like we didn't talk about there, and that part of it was Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh's going to fall behind, and that's going to allow one of those teams that are trying to catch them to move up, and then they're going to have to try to fight for a playoff spot for as a wild card, and then compete against those other teams trying to get there. So I don't think that's going to be rough on them. So the NFC is, I don't know, I don't want to call it cut and dried, but I think it's pretty close. The NFC, where's my thing at over here? There we go. So if you look at the NFC right now, you got Seattle, Philadelphia, the Packers, the Buccaneers, the Rams, the Lions. Then you got on the fringe. On the fringe, you got the Bears, the 49ers, the Panthers, the Vikings, the Cowboys. None of them teams are going to make it, man. The Bears. One of them teams has got to get in, I guess. So where's my other one that I have over here? There we go. So the teams that are in the playoffs include the Bears. So when you think about who's out, like the first team out in the NFC, that's Carolina, and then Minnesota, and then Dallas, and Arizona, and Atlanta, and Washington, and who's going to come take those spots? I don't know who's going to come take those spots from the teams that are already there. Even teams like Chicago, San Francisco, maybe, right? San Francisco could take that spot, but they're going to have to win. So because the Bears are going to have preferential treatment in terms of scheduling. So it's possible that the Bears make it in as one of the only also rans to get in. But in the AFC, if you look at the same thing, you got Colts, Broncos, Patriots, Steelers, Chargers, Bills, and Jaguars, and then you have Chiefs, Texans, Ravens trying to get in, and I think you're going to see Chiefs and Ravens will move into those spots, take somebody's spots. Which could certainly be Jacksonville, and certainly could be Pittsburgh. So as that kind of goes through, I think that's where you're going to see the AFC games start to become super important. The NFC will be important for figuring out seeding, and I think that probably will be important because think about the cold weather teams in the NFC. Philadelphia Eagles and Seattle's and Green Bay's. Those are all going to be cold weather teams, and whether any of these hot weather teams can get in front of that, like the Rams, or I guess I'm not going to say Tampa Bay because they're not going to get there. Detroit maybe because they got a dome. That would help those teams, but they got to go play in the cold weather. I don't know if that helps. That's certainly not going to help the Rams, and it's certainly not going to help Detroit to go play those games against those teams in the cold.
No, and I'm going to close with this, Scotty. I find it hard to believe we haven't played tonight's game, and I do agree that the Packers are the right side. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to win, but I do agree that they are the right side tonight. But next week they host the Lions, a dome team. And yet the Super Bowl defending champs, who we know at home are, I was going to use the word invincible. They do lose at home, but they've been great the last couple of years at home. Only 1.5 point favorites to the dome team. Now, I don't have the weather. I know Saturday back east is going to be cold. So if it's cold in Boston, it's probably going to be cold in Philly. You find that number initially, because it will be adjusted after tomorrow because someone could get hurt, yada, yada, yada. But don't you see, doesn't it seem kind of short that the Eagles are only 1.5 over the Lions?
Well, based on a lot of things that I've seen and some of the data things that come my way about lines and numbers and what the perception of lines and numbers are, the market really likes Green Bay. They really, really like Green Bay. And I just got information sent to me today that Steve Mackinnon, the guy from VSiN, and based on his market numbers and perceived market numbers, thinks the line should be Green Bay tonight -4.5. And if you look at it from a different level from him and what he thinks, he's like, it could be a balloon up to 9. And I'm like, what the hell? There's no wonder nobody listens to VSiN with those kind of shit. But that does tell you a little bit about what the public's interpretation of what teams are. And if the public's out here going, Green Bay's the best team in the NFC, then I understand why the numbers are the way the numbers are. But you just said it as well as I said, as well as I look at it. There's no reason to believe that the Green Bay Packers are the best team in the NFC. There's no reason to believe that. Other than when their first game or two that they played of the season, they were pretty dominant in those first 2 games. They haven't been dominant in any other game since. So if they're at home losing to Carolina, good teams don't do that. So I just sit here and think we'll play that out and see how it looks and what happens. I think the most surprising thing to me this year, especially with the way that things are going in the NFC, is the Philadelphia Eagles. They're the defending Super Bowl champions. They're a good football team, but you know what? They've been bad on offense, and they've got all kinds of weapons that they can utilize and get things done. And their quarterback has been disinterested, and they're supposed to have the best offense and defensive lines in all football. Well, they're going to have to start playing like it because they're in these stretch runs now where that's going to make a difference and matter. And if you want to express your dominance over the league, you're going to have to start beating teams like Green Bay. And Detroit and all of these teams. You're going to have to beat those teams. And theoretically, you're going to have to beat them, just beat them up because, like the Lions, I think the Lions are a team that can go out there and just outspeed you. That team was so fast yesterday. I mean, they were so fast. It was unbelievable how fast they were. And, that one wide receiver, holy crap, was his name Williams or whatever? That guy was out there, like being a track star. He was just all over the place, just outrunning everybody. And I'm like, why can't you tackle him? Well, they can't catch him. He's like, what's that cartoon, the Coyote and the Roadrunner? He's like the Roadrunner out there, and everybody else is the Coyote trying to catch him.
Well, tomorrow, myself and Scotty will be back around 9:15. Set your dial then. Until then, potential closing bell around 4 o'clock today. As the UPS guy has came in, a good cue here. So for myself, Jeff Dawson, at EC Sports Investor, one and only Mr. Scotty Webb at Webby 20 MLB. We wish everyone a blessed day. Remember, guys, it's a new week. Okay, if you had a bad weekend and you had a bad week, breathe. Go get yourself a nice espresso, a nice latte, maybe a little holiday cheer, and stay tuned. We'll keep you on the right side. See you soon.